Hello, everybody. Welcome to another hour of the Multiverse Fundraiser. We are so excited to have you here today. It is a great day for a virtual Comic Con. And speaking of that, let me start out the hour like we start every hour with information about the charity that we are benefiting this year, which is Comic Books for Kids. Check this out.
The Multiverse Fundraiser is partnering with Comic Books for Kids to raise money for their cause. Their mission is to provide comic books to children in hospitals and cancer centers across the United States, Canada, and the UK. We believe in the importance of providing stories that promote hope and bravery to kids who are facing things that are scarier than any supervillain. And we truly believe in this cause. To donate, you can either go to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/the Multiverse Fundraiser or directly to comicbooksforkids.org.
So there you have it, folks. This is a cause that we really believe in. It is helping kids that are at their most needing of hope and inspiration and bravery. So we really encourage you to check out that link and donate as much as you are able to that cause. So I am here now with the fantastic RJ Conte. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Staying warm.
Yeah, you guys have it a lot worse up there in Seattle, right?
Not really. It's not really that cold. It's just kind of that rainy that creeps into your bones. But we haven't had too much rain this year, so doing okay.
Good. Yeah, every time down here in Texas, we complain about the cold. There are lots of friends I have in other places that I know are like, you guys have no idea what cold is like.
We're one of those that really don't have any idea, I gotta say.
Okay, well, that's good then. So for our viewers who may not be familiar with how awesome you are, can you give us a brief snapshot? Who is RJ Conte?
Oh, you're so kind. So I was raised in a Christian home, was homeschooled all the way up, was writing as soon as I could speak and telling stories, mostly to process a lot of childhood difficulties that I had. And at this point, I'm homeschooling the next generation. I've got 3 kids. I love Bible study. I try to keep up with writing where I've got an accountability night with some best friends once a week, and we write all the time, and it keeps me kind of sane in this really broken world, and also being able to use what I've learned and what I'm learning to just benefit others and glorify God. So, yeah.
That's awesome. But what's also interesting about you, for me anyway, is you write in a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
There's not really one specific thing for you. And actually, I was Googling you last night to get some images and such, and I discovered there's even more books that you have written that I didn't even know about. So you are, when you say you've been writing since you're a kid, you've obviously also been publishing for a while because you've got a lot out there.
Yeah, basically, my dad suggested this, but to take a year off after high school, kind of like a year in between high school and college, and try to get started as a writer and have my own business. He kind of backed me with, money to get me started, because back then all you had was vanity presses that cost an arm and a leg. You didn't have the ebook era where you can publish for free and Amazon just takes a cut. And so it was a lot harder to get published. You had a box of books in your bedroom and you walked around, you talked to people, you tried to get in at schools and stuff like that. So really, I got started at 18, straight out of high school. Yeah, and it's kind of something I've always loved. I ended up becoming a piano teacher and going more the music route to actually like have savings and a nest egg, and then obviously a homeschool mom. But the writing has always been that really fun, serious side hobby that's like kept me going.
That's awesome. And once again, you're kind of all over the map because you have fantasy books, you have what I would probably call rom-com books.
Yeah.
You've got you've got science fiction. You are all over the place
I know,
in
and that
terms
was
of
weird.
genre.
I had really, really smart authors and business people who told me, don't do that. Like, have different pen names for different genres, or really stick to one and hone your craft there. Like, make a name for yourself in this specific area. And I just couldn't do it because there are different life experiences I've had and different sides of me that just, I needed to be able to write what felt right for that story, that character, that situation. And so I jumped all over the place. I just decided I'm probably never going to be this magnificent career author up here with this business or non-business model, but it brings me joy. There was a very brief time where I tried to write to market. They say write to market, where I was writing what was selling. It was fairy tale retellings in an issue-driven, like, psychological way. And by the second book in the series that I was trying to again do like kind of like mini standalones, like novellas that go together. It was at the time when like Cinder had come out. I'm gonna go blank on her name, Marissa, something. Since she wrote a whole bunch of like fairy tale retellings, Cinder and a whole bunch of those. And it was like, okay, this is what's selling right now. I should do that. And by the second book, it was just painful. It's like my heart isn't in this. This doesn't feel like what God's called me to do. And every week was a chore. And it's like, I'm a busy mom. If this is a chore and it doesn't feel like my heart's in it, then I'm not going to do it. So kind of like put that to rest at that time. Had shed a lot of tears on like, should I be doing this? I was really going to the Realm Makers Convention, which is an amazing conference for Christian spec fic authors that I highly recommend. And I was really getting more into the business mindset while I had 2 toddlers at home. And it was like, I'm really dissonant within myself here, and this doesn't work. And I'm going to find my craft to be a joy if I just do what feels right. And the good thing about writing in different genres is you get to like learn a really well-rounded, balanced way. You get to have characters of all different kinds. You get to dabble in and learn different genres. And I feel like as now a writing teacher to my own kids in the homeschool environment, and I did tutor a group of homeschool boys at one point in writing as well in the past, it gives you a more balanced look at how you teach writing and how you approach it. So I have no regrets at this point. I've had regrets in the past and like sat with those, processed those, gave those up to God. And at this point, it is what it is. And I'm happy. I enjoy my writing for what it is. So not the best business model, but it does give me a well-rounded education, I guess.
I would say so. And, you know, the best advice I've ever gotten when it comes to creative writing is you should write the kind of book that you would want to read, right?
Yeah.
Like if this was written by somebody else and you found it on a shelf, you would be into it. And that has been one of my like guiding advices in all the stuff that I've written. And you're right.
I had this really cool exchange with Lois Lowry. You know, she wrote The Giver, which is my favorite book of all time, and she wrote some other really amazing things like Number the Stars. Excellent, excellent author. And at the time in her Giver trilogy with Giver, Gathering Blue, and Messenger, I had, by the end of the book, thought that she basically understood a concept that was important to me. And I emailed her about it. I've emailed her a couple times since I was a kid and adult. She's really good about responding to all fans, Twitter or email. She was amazing. She's been somebody who's inspired me in my whole writing journey. Then I emailed her about it and I was like, I feel like, you know, you understood this concept. And I was talking to her and she was like, you write that book. You know, you write that book. What you almost wish that my book would have been, you write it. And I've never felt more inspired. Like, yeah, I want to write the book that like I wanted this book to have been. Like, because I love The Giver, but by Messenger and then definitely by Sun, her last 4th book that came much later, I felt like it kind of fell off the bandwagon. And I wasn't like writing to complain. I was like, I feel like you could also do this. You could also think about this, you know, giving her ideas. And basically she was like, that sounds like a you book and you get to write that. And that really made a difference in my life. Like, yeah, I should write the books that I wish were on the shelf. So I agree. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's also so cool when you have a writing hero who you get to interact with and it's a positive experience. That's really cool. That reminds me of like a story one time where C.S. Lewis tried really hard to answer all of his mail, specifically mail from children about the Chronicles of Narnia. And there was a kid who asked him one time why he wanting him to write another Narnia book. And he said, well, you should write that book.
Yes.
You know, That's so
that
cool.
kid may have grown up to actually be a writer, and it may have benefited their life in so many ways that we don't know. Yeah, it's excellent advice.
Cool, cool, cool. So I will have to admit, I haven't read all of your newest books,
You're so
but
sweet to have read any.
well, and I do. The ones that I've read, I have really, really enjoyed. For those of you who don't
Yay.
know, the way that we first met was actually I found one of her short stories, Lucent Sylph, and I read that and I really, really liked it. And I wound up teaching it in a lot of my college classes and had an interview with you first and then later brought you to class multiple times.
Such an
So
honor.
that's been
Such
good.
an honor.
Oh, well, Lucent Sylph is a really great story. But then I also read some of your other stuff as well. One of the books that I was really impressed with, first of all, it just caught my attention because of what it was, and also, frankly, because of the cover art, which is quite amazing, is The Frog Prince's Courtship. Do you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yes, this one is a favorite of mine. I mean, you can't really say that. You're not supposed to say that because it's like picking favorite kids, but the cover art I saw, this was just art on DeviantArt, the website, and it was just an artist who was doing just goofy pictures and images like this. And I was like, oh, I have to have that for the book I'm writing. He lived in Australia at the time. So I worked out a contract with him, paid him for it, and got all the rights to it, which was super cool. And then I tried contacting him because I would really like to write a sequel to this book too. So I tried contacting him to like request another, piece of art by him to be for the sequel. And it was during COVID and I never heard from him, and I've been worried about him ever since. Like, I hope he's okay. I don't know how. Yeah, I know it was a difficult time in a lot of people's lives, and I never heard back from him. So that was kind of sad. I don't know. And then it ended up putting the sequel on the back burner. So it's probably not right timing. I'll give him a little bit more time. But yeah. And then I had Perry Elizabeth. She's an excellent cover designer too. Throw that image onto this beautiful cover. The back, she wrapped it around where she even has like a single frog on the back of the paperback, and did a beautiful job with it. But this one is a fairy tale retelling, so I did go back to that, but I did it on my own time and I made it comedic. I didn't hit up those fairy tale retellings in such a darker, issue-driven way. This one is very much a rom-com, and it's much more lighthearted, and ended up being a full-length novel, and I just enjoyed it so much better. Again, not trying to write to market, but as much, but definitely trying to write something that was meaningful to me, and it's been well received. Yeah. So basically I thought, okay, what if the princess and the frog, like, she doesn't actually want a prince, she's not interested in getting married, and she has all these secret like agendas and desires to become queen of her nation that's never had a female queen. So there's a little bit of female empowerment definitely in the story. She's as you can see from her face, she's definitely got attitude. She's a really strong character. And it turns out that the frog that was a prince who she had to kiss, she's like, all right, fine, I'll free this poor guy. But he ends up becoming an ally of like helping her achieve her goals, which I think is important. I think a lot of the fairy tales are very much women getting forced into marriages, or they're just like basically kind of a plot device for the magic. And we don't often see, romances where the guy has his own goals. He's also a very strong character, and he's somebody that she can find herself working alongside and taking care of her when she hasn't let anybody else take care of her. But he's supporting her goals just as equally back, and they have such a good friendship side by side. Yeah, and they both have their own goals and desires and dreams that end up working out well with each other. And there's plot twists and stuff, and I don't know, I find it a lot of fun. My daughters are 12 and 13, and they brought this book and another one to a gift exchange with their friends. And so one of their, I guess she's 14, got the book, received it for Christmas, and had to like come approach me the next time she saw me and be like, that was steamy, Mrs. Conte. I don't know if I can look at you the same. So I was like, yeah, it's a little bit, it's probably like a mid-teens to adult book. You're a little young, but oh well, sorry about that, kid. So one of my negative reviews on it is from a Christian mom, was like, this was too steamy for me. So there are some really good steamy kiss scenes.
There are, I will say that. And Ravel, the main character, she definitely is not bashful about her preferences, her desires, any of that kind of stuff. Which again,
they're both
I'm down for.
Yeah, they're both very confident characters. Neither of them are shy or bashful or being, dragged along. They obviously are working within the confines of their parents and the system and the problems that their parents have caused for their generation, and feeling like they either have to go outside of their parents or around that, and trying to have to then approach parents with, this wasn't good, this wasn't okay, we need to do things differently. So there's a lot of that aspect to it too. Of them having to kind of come into their own courage there, but they're definitely, neither of them are shy. And that's fun, because as fun as the introvert and extrovert dynamic is, to have these two very confident extrovert characters is also a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's hilarious to me though. Like the Christian mom and teenagers reaction. I can see myself as a teenager, I probably would have felt the same way. But yeah. That's also, I think, part of what makes you a important author in some ways, is that you have somebody inside of our Christian space who is this is obviously not smut or anything on that level, but who is able to be frank about that and have a character who is more frank. And yeah, it did raise my eyebrows a little bit when I read it for the first time.
Right, eyebrows are supposed to be being raised, otherwise our faces get too passive.
There you go. But yeah, one of the things that, again, I liked about the book a lot was Ravel as a character. Not just because she's a strong, empowered female character. Obviously, that's kind of old hat at this point, right? There's so many of those at this point. But also just because of her personality. I found her to be she's kind of a scrapper in some ways. She's really a fighter. She fights for what she wants, and we see somebody. I saw her as a person of great intelligence who is stuck in the societal system, like the cookie cutter thing that she's supposed to be. But she's so smart that she is trying her best to figure out a way out of the cage, or a way to turn the cage into something else. And that, I think, worked really well in, again, the fairy tale retelling. And like you said, a fairy tale retelling that is not just like this dark gothic nightmare, which is a lot of the fairy tale retellings. But again, fairy tales are a big part of my academic work. They're also a big part of just things I like to read, the fairy tale retellings. And again, okay, please, you in the audience, I know there's going to be people who feel differently than me about this, so please don't. I have never found a lot of Frog Prince retellings that I really dug. I know that they exist. There's
The Princess and the Frog.
Yes, The Princess and the Frog, the Disney one, which, again, please don't kill me. I know people love that movie.
I did not
been my cup of tea.
No.
It's just not been my thing. There's also, if you go more real old school, for those of you who remember fairy tale theater way back in the day, there was an episode with the Frog Prince that was Robin Williams playing the Frog Prince.
I gotta check that out.
Well, but even that, it didn't really work for me. You might enjoy it. It was not my cup of tea.
Okay.
But I really liked this one. And part of what I liked about it is Ravel as a character. I also like that you avoid, how do I put this? There are versions, if I'm remembering correctly, of the original Frog Prince stories where this is set in India or someplace like it. And you really draw on that really heavily with, I know that it's not stated to be India, but the Indian culture is really, really obvious there of
Yeah.
Ravel's kingdom and where they came from. And I really like that because the Frog Prince seems to me to be one of the fairy tales that's been whitewashed the most in terms of making it just generic European white people. And I really liked that you had the Indian influence in the story still.
Well, and not to give spoilers, but yeah, Ravel's culture of Ayla is very Indian, yeah. And there's like Hindi foods and things like that mixed in around. And then the other neighboring countries are all just different types of Indian cultures. But the prince himself, the Frog Prince himself, not to give any spoilers, but he comes from a very suppressed white culture. And that's not normally seen, where, you know, it's the kind of the opposite. He's very suppressed. And there's a lot of like touching on kind of racism type things there, and like how do we work together and honor and respect all people.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that was interesting. I remember, Blondie over there, he can't take the spices, right? In the food.
Yeah, Ravel is
Yeah.
absolutely obsessed with his blonde hair because she never sees that. So she just he's basically just a body to support the blonde hair that she is obsessed with.
There you go.
Yeah,
And
blonde curls.
yeah. And another thing about it is how you portrayed Fairy was also I liked because I am again aware of the medieval tradition. And if you wanna know what we're talking about here, you can read Tolkien on fairy stories. He'll explain it to you. But the idea of this being there's another world that is parallel to our world and they intersect at different times. And this is
Mhm.
the world that all of these beings like fairies and elves and dwarves and dragons and goblins and whatnot came from. You are again one of the relatively few modern authors that really took that concept seriously in how you did the world building, and I think it worked pretty effectively. The way that
Good.
you built up that world and then what you showed us of that world worked really well.
Yeah, there's a lot of like prejudice surrounding the fairies and the magical beings that has to be worked through too. Of like they're just these malicious creatures that are like turning good guys into frogs and messing with our lives. And you know, we've now developed all of these myths and prejudice surrounding them. Like if basically anything goes wrong in our life, it's because of them. And yeah, trying to kind of pull in that um old school thinking about fairies being these malevolent beings. And there's
The
a book,
other, yeah.
yeah, there's a book, like the fairy like guidebook that I had been reading to the kids. It's just kind of fun. It's just all things fairy and all the old all the old myths, all the old fairy tales, yeah, being able to draw from some of those and kind of incorporate that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Come to think of it, I can understand why bad people would have some prejudice against fairies because in those old fairy tales, it is usually the bad ones that horrible things happen to them
Yeah.
based on fairies. Like, if you, for those of you in the audience, my students know most of them because if they've taken me for multiple courses, they've probably read it at some point. The Fairy by Charles Perrault, back in the old days, where you have one sister who's good, the other one who's a brat, and the good sister winds up getting blessed by this fairy
Yes.
to have the diamonds and the pearls fall out of her mouth, and the evil one has toads and snakes. So
No, this is grim. This is totally grim too. I've been doing a grim study with my kids in homeschooling all
oh,
year.
oh
Yeah,
wow,
every single one. It's like the moral lesson is like hitting you in the face. There's not subtle at all. It's like the bad ugly one, the good beautiful one. Every single time. You start a grim story and it's like there once was a like beautiful princess. Like, yep, here we go again. Yeah.
and horrible violence, right? That's
Yes.
the always the thing. Like,
Yes.
if you are a bad person, you will die a horrible, horrible, violent death. That is 100% how the German culture in general
Yeah.
tried to instill morality through fear, basically, right? Like, either be a good person or you're gonna get eaten alive by this horrible monster.
I got to
So,
visit Germany this year, actually, which was super cool since we've been doing the Grimm study. I got to go with my husband on a business trip. And yeah, they are very like doing their business, don't talk to you, like very like move it along sort of people. It was really interesting. It was really fun to visit and be in
That's
their
cool.
culture for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Let's see. Another book of yours that is somewhat more recent that I know about is this one. Also, another awesome cover, I have to say.
This
This
one I did
one,
myself with a Fiverr guy. This one was all me.
cool.
It's kind of
That's
funny.
cool.
Like there are some covers that are done by cover artists. Like the book Artificial Love. Like that one is some really really quality work. By her name is Seedlings Design, and that one can covers can run you a ton of money. And then there are other covers you wouldn't know cost you like $5 because you did yourself. And I think that covers can range the gamut depending on the genre. And I one time had friends over and they were asking me about that. And I was like, I'm going to show you a couple of my book covers and you guess which ones were expensive. And they guessed wrong because sometimes if you just find the right image that you can buy the rights to, people can put it together and it looks great. And then other times you can pay exorbitant amount of money and you basically are just trying to buy licensing to a portrait of a face of a model or something. And it doesn't even feel worth it. So if I always try to like play that game of, can I do this one myself, or do I really need for the genre to like buy like the fantasy genre? You want to buy good quality artwork for that. But this one is Christian issue driven, like again rom-com. And the rom-com genre is a lot of like really minimal designs, and it catches your eye. It's like clean cut, bright, minimal fonts are more important than the actual images. And so yeah, this one was a lot of fun to kind of help design myself.
It is a great cover. Like it really is. And it, even without a plot summary, it gives you a taste of what this thing is. But go ahead and give us a little bit more of a full summary of what the plot is of this one.
So basically the main character here has pretty severe ADHD, and she's just chaotic. She is so much fun. She's a lot of stream to consciousness. Her thoughts go all over the place. And I feel like she's a really good representation of what it's like to live with ADHD. I don't personally have it, but my husband does. And a lot of people I love do. And so I really enjoy the way that their mind works. And this is my husband's favorite story. He definitely helped a lot with the editing process and really enjoyed the character. So it's kind of a nod to him there. But basically this girl, she again doesn't do anything halfway. And so she's drinking one night, is a little bit tipsy, and runs over a guy walking through a crosswalk. And thankfully he lives. And but he has to have multiple surgeries on his leg, and he's in rehab and all that. And once she gets out of jail, she just decides, in order to kind of appease her conscience, and she couches everything in humor. She has a coating of humor, which is a lot like me, a coating of humor to kind of cover all of her insecurities and her struggles. And so she's like, what'll make my life and his life better is I'm just going to show up and be his personal servant, basically. So while he's stuck in a hospital and stuck recovering, she just like takes over. She brings in her computer and her food and her snacks, and she takes up his time. And he's this really mousy introverted author. So this is again more of the extrovert introvert dynamic, but he's shy. He doesn't know how to tell her. He doesn't want her to be there. He's completely overwhelmed by her. He's got his own secrets, his own backstory. He's had a hard life, and he's in a cast and dealing with pain and surgery. And there's this exuberant girl that's just, hey, taking over his life, and like slowly she wins his heart. And they both help each other to process both of their depression, which looks completely different. It very much is a depression story. And for the main character, it's like she has a lot of like deep analogies and pictures of what depression is like for her, that when I've had people who love this book, that's what they've told me, is that's what meant the most to them, is like they could relate to some of these concepts. Like she'll describe depression as the baby in the back of her head always crying. There's a section in the book where she's like, imagine you're on the sofa with your best friend, you've got the world's best pizza, you're watching, like, because my character loves The Princess Bride, you're watching Princess Bride for the 15th time, you're comfortable, the temperature's just right, you got Reese's Pieces on, in a bowl, and she's describing like her perfect night, and then she's like, and you want to enjoy it, but there's a baby crying in the other room. And you're just like, it's hard to enjoy with a baby crying in the other room. Can somebody like soothe the baby? And you're like, okay, well, I could like not pay as much attention to the movie and put earplugs in, but then I'm going to miss this. And I'm going to kind of disembody here. And I'm not going to be able to be fully present. And so for her, that's what depression is like. And so she just kind of drowns it by more volume, more things, more this or that. And then obviously Grayson, the guy character, has a completely different version of that. And it's kind of how they help each other process that and kind of like, yeah, process their depression. So it's fun. I think I enjoyed it. I enjoy it so much. And I was saying earlier to you, Hollis, but I have a negative review, or at least two, like one or two negative reviews on the book that are some of my favorite reviews of all time, because basically somebody wrote like, I like the inside of this character's head was so crazy. I felt like my mind was exploding. And like, there are a lot of people who love this book that felt like that was actually a recommendation. They're like, yes, I want to read this. And so that's my favorite review. It's like, promote that review. This is the most honest review. Like, if you want to be inside of a chaotic, head experience to somebody who is really powerfully dealing with ADHD and depression, like this is kind of what it feels like. And so that's my favorite review.
That's really cool. And it's really cool that you bring this up, because you obviously, with this book and others, like exploring characters with maybe some different kinds of psychology than you usually find. And there are a lot of people I know, both in the staff of the Multiverse Fundraiser and things we've been talking about earlier. Like, for instance, earlier today, I was a part of a panel on X-Men and diversity and the different ways that the X-Men characters have represented diversity. And one of the things that I didn't even think about, but other people on the panel were talking about, is the different neurodivergent types that you see inside of the X-Men. And if you guys are interested in that, I highly recommend you go back and watch the recording of that. But
I totally will, yeah.
Yeah. The question, all that I want to get to, is they talked about how important it is to have representation of neurodivergent characters or neuroatypical characters inside of fiction and media in general. But it's also a difficult balancing act for an author, because you don't want to perpetuate some of the negative stereotypes that have existed in other things about ADHD or autism or things like that. So for you as an author, how do you do that balancing act of trying to stay true to the vast diversity of humans in terms of our brains, and how do you also avoid making this offensive to people?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think some of the ways in which it's been offensive in the past, I mean, my opinion is that it's like put in a side character over here, and that character is like comic relief with their neurodivergence. Like, oh, it's my quirky friend that shows up to say a witty line once in a while. And I mean, I have an early story I wrote when I was younger that I experimented with that. And it's not really what I do anymore. I like to give them the spotlight. Like, this is them as a hero. This is them succeeding in life. This is them getting the girl, getting the guy. This is them with their happy ending. This is them working through stuff and actually processing things. And this is what it really looks like to be in there. Because like I said, my husband has ADHD. I've definitely struggled with depression. Together, the two of us like sit there and kind of hash out what this looks like. And like, here's how this character would maybe take even paths that we've used to heal and process stuff. And so I think you show the reality of it. You don't sugarcoat it, or you don't stereotype it. Like, oh, look, my neurodivergent character shows up and talks about the latest anime they've watched. I mean, no offense to anime, I love anime, but like latest anime, and like makes a quirky comment as he pushes his glasses up his nose. Like, okay, well, yeah, there are a lot of people that might fit that bill, but it looks stereotypical. We don't get them fleshed out. We don't get to hear their thoughts and their deep feelings. And instead, like, let's go into it to the point that like somebody who doesn't get it reading it might even be like, wow, that was a lot of stream to consciousness. But like, let's go into it and like, let's sit with them, and then let's have them actually get some healing, get some connection, get some outside attachment, get some happy endings. Like, Let's watch this person succeed. One of my favorite books, and it's got some, tricky topics in it, so I don't recommend it for, the under 18 crowd, but one of my favorites is Turtles All the Way Down by Green, and that one really talks about what it's like to live with debilitating OCD. And yeah, she struggles and she has kind of a broken relationship, but you watch her come into her own as her own person and kind of be enough for herself and get the wherewithal to beat back what is her lowest point. You watch her go through her lowest. And some of it's really, really hard to read, but it's honest. And so I think if you're honest and obviously not without knowing what you're doing, either having something yourself, there's a thing called own voices, where if you like hashtag something own voices, it's like, this is the disorder I have. And so I can own this as something I wrote. It doesn't mean that you can't write anything that you don't personally have, but I think you need to sit really closely. Like I said, I think all of my closest loved ones have ADHD. If you sit really closely with people who have this and you give it to them, you're like, help me with this. What do you think? Does this feel right? Do you like this representation here? And then you're just super honest about it. It's going to read more authentic, and the right readers are going to really relate to it and feel like it captured and promoted and validated and valued them for who they are. So that's my opinion. I don't know. I'd obviously love, if people wanted to comment or chat, I'd obviously love to hear how other people represent neurodivergence, because I think that's cool.
Definitely. And that is a reminder for all of you watching live that you can submit your own questions. If you want to ask RJ Conte anything, you can put them in the comments and you have a chance of having that show up on screen and us actually asking her. And I think that was a really great response. Representation of any kind in fiction is always so tricky. And yes, if you are in the writing world right now, that own voice that you talked about is such a big deal. It is like it pops up in so many places right now.
Right.
And
so like
it is.
The TLDR is basically like, don't shoehorn a side character in for representation, but do you actually care about this type of a person who is all around us? Like, how many of us are even normal? Very few. This type of a person, and then go as honestly authentic about it, and that's going to ring true. Like, you care to know them. You absolutely care to know them, and that'll your heart will shine through on that.
Awesome. Let's see. Another one, which I don't know if it's your most recent book, but I know it's pretty recent, at least. I think last year, maybe, is this one.
Yes.
What a title, by the way.
Brad helped me come up with that title, too. It was like, I got to make this work. This is definitely very YA, very, very teen. And so he kind of came up with the last idea for making it all kind of alliterated.
That's cool.
This one's fun.
So
this cover was done. This cover was done by my best friend, who has a graphic design bent, and helped me put that one together. And so I was like, I don't even think I need to hire anyone. This one's perfect. Again, more of that minimal YA feel, and I love it.
Cool. So give us a summary of this one.
So this one has kind of a more Ravel-like character in it, but without the if you were to take Ravel from Frog Prince and strip the ambitions out of her and put her in a very depressed and stuck place, almost like younger Ravel. If Ravel is in her 20s in Frog Prince, this is Ravel in her teens without that like ambitious extroverted drive. That's the character in this one. She is very misanthropic. She's just not that likable, I think. And that's on purpose, because this book is absolutely about her growth. So this is like, if I used to describe like liminal fantasy, like Freaky Friday is like liminal fantasy, right? Where it's like the world works normally, and then there's this pop of fantasy right here where something is different and something magical happens to two people, and you may never ever see it again. It's just like popping through, kind of like the Thin Places, where you can, it's like a pop through of magic. This one is kind of like liminal sci-fi, I'd say. Again, it's futuristic. The world is basically the same, but we have now perfected the ability to transplant brains. So it's not just okay, I need a new heart, here's a heart transplant, I need a new kidney. It's now, oh, for our coma patients, our brain damaged patients, we now can transplant brains. And but because, in this universe I've created, the brain is the center of attachments, emotions, feelings, preferences. You also then have to enter mental therapy as you recover, with PT as well, to fight back that brain and own it, because it's going to start tweaking and changing your personality and telling you how to think, feel, and behave. So you have this extremely, again, hard-nosed athlete, misanthropic, which Ravel and Frog Prince isn't misanthropic, but this is definitely a much more depressed, introverted version of that kind of like strong female character. And she's been in a skiing accident. She's got like one guy friend who is an enabler. He really is. He just kind of enables her bad behavior and kind of parents her. And she's kind of used to her life going the way she wants it to. She's got athletic agendas and motivations, but she's not in a good emotional place. But she thinks she's great, kind of a very egotistical. And she gets the brain transplant of somebody who's the exact opposite, because this girl was really, really strong when she accidentally passed away. And so this brain piece is going to really work for her. And she gets that. And this girl is mousy, moody, romantic, and she's infatuated with the lead singer in a band, in this rock banjo alternative band. And
rock
so
banjo alternative. I love it.
I googled some of these, and they're awesome. Like,
they actually exist.
Oh yeah,
Oh wow.
Yeah, like indie alternative, and they're like kick butt, and they got the dark eyeliner, and they're awesome. And so my main character Lane, she ends up with this absolutely so having a moody, like obsessive romantic piece in her head now with her own strength, she just gets into so much trouble, because she like thinks she's regulating, but she can't tell, does she actually want this or not? Because there's a lot of that meshing of brain parts, basically, and a lot of that dissonance of, do I smash this person out of my life, when there are some ways, like I'm looking at my guy friend differently. Like I've been taking advantage of his kindness and basically just like ordering him about and controlling him. But also like now I'm obsessed with this banjo rock star who I don't get it. And she has to sit in some therapy sessions. She has to work through her stuff, and she's basically seeing the whole world differently. And she has to decide, do I stamp that out, or do I work with that? Do I heal the parts that aren't healthy, or do I, just stamp it out of my life? And how that passion, that emotion, that love of people really that exists deep down in this additional brain part is healthy and good, and can be integrated in a way that's healthy and good and wholesome. And so she just gets into lots of trouble, a lot of secondhand embarrassment. She gets into lots of trouble while she works that through. And it's not cookie cutter teen stuff, but it's definitely like in that teen drama field with just quite a sci-fi bent to it. It was a lot of fun to write.
That sounds about as far from the cookie cutter YA fiction as you can possibly get.
Some of the boy band, like, do I love him drama probably will be relatable to teens, but yeah, it's in its whole new sci-fi ballpark there. Yeah.
That's great. Fun. I want to do a few comments from our audience. Got Willow of Skylar Productions. Hey Willow, thanks for watching. She's one of our staff members here at the Multiverse. She said that she really appreciates you talking about this topic. I know that this is a big deal for her as somebody who is neurodivergent, and it is a really important thing that you're doing.
Excellent. I'm so glad. Well, you have to give it a read and tell me what you think. I like constructive criticism too. I really do.
As we all should. All of us authors should.
Yeah.
And my wife, Professor Haley Patillo, she also, I think, talking about your newest book, that this scenario would be so challenging.
It's sad. This poor character goes to the writer, but she needs it so much. She needs a swift kick in the pants in the most loving way.
We also have a question from Molly Daniels, who asks, do you primarily write in first person? Just added several of your books to my wish list. Oh, and I'm following you on Zon.
Oh, thank you so much, Molly. Let me know. The best thing that anybody can do for an author is to leave a review, because the more reviews, the more we can sell. So absolutely, let me know what you thought. All the honest truth of it. It depends on the book and depends on the project. I've absolutely done both. I would say probably equally both. Yeah, equally both first person and third. It really depends on the project. Yeah. No real rhyme or reason for that. Just, yeah, does it call for it? I think most of the time, not always. I guess I couldn't even say that. Yeah, I really don't know if there's a general pattern to it. It just really depends on the project itself. Yeah.
Definitely, that makes sense. Now, my final really deep question for you of this time is related back to our mission this Comic Con for comic books for kids. There's been a lot of talk, like Mike, the person who runs the charity, went in his first interview that he kicked us off yesterday on Friday. He talks a lot about the value of stories that are in these more fantastic genres, superheroes, fantasy, fairy tales, science fiction, all those sorts of things, to provide an escape for, especially for kids whose everyday existence in these hospitals is pretty torturous most of the time. So I wanted to know, do you as somebody who writes in those kinds of genres, do you have any thoughts on the value of this kind of fiction? Because sometimes it's looked down on as, oh, that's escapist. And, therefore the connotation is it's not as valuable. We need to deal with the real world and all these real world issues, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts, and I'm glad you asked me that question. From a very personal standpoint, I'm really excited about this charity, and I'm really glad you're doing this, because 2 years ago, my own oldest daughter spent 5 weeks in a hospital. Like, we lived there. She ended up with a Crohn's diagnosis. She was basically starving to death with the flare that was happening. It was excruciating for her. It was miserable. It was one of the worst times for our family. It was so hard. Seattle Children's was amazing and all of that, but she had to live there for 5 weeks. She went home after 4 and had to go right back for more pain management. And today she's thriving and healthy on monthly infusions. But during that time, we had such an outpouring of love from people, and a lot of well-meaning, really loving people sent her artwork, like coloring books, stuff like that. And she was so weak and so out of it that even the idea of coloring for quite a while wasn't something that she could do. So she watched a lot of like just cartoons on TV, things like Miraculous Ladybug and Big City Greens, and things where characters are, in Miraculous Ladybug, they are superheroes, and they're thriving against all odds, and there's funny, they're funny, and they're also meaningful and heartwarming. But also I brought books to her and I read to her, because sometimes, again, when your brain is in that state of like just trying to heal yourself and you are so out of it and struggling, it's hard to pick up a book and to take in the words yourselves. And so things with art and pictures and color that are easy to read are really, really helpful, because we think of these kids kind of like us, sitting in their hospital bed just kind of stuck. And what we aren't realizing is their body is going through war, and they're sick, they're unhealthy, they're in pain. It's not like just us stuck in a bed. And it was hard. It was hard for her. So being read to and seeing fun pictures and being entertained for all those many hours and distracting her from the ongoing pain. I don't want to cry about it, but like that was life-giving for her. So I really believe in this for kids. I really think that this is amazing. And for them to see strong characters beating back the bad guys and beating against all odds can kind of be directly applied to their life. And yeah, obviously at some point she needed to put down the TV shows, when she's home and she's feeling better, and especially many months after, and she needed to sit with a therapist and sit with us, her parents, and process and talk through what really happened from start to finish and work through those emotions. And like a year later, on the anniversary of it, she had to kind of do that all over again. But in the middle of it, sometimes we just really need that avenue of joy and that avenue of like seeing ourselves in that superhero. Her body was a fighter. It was working hard. And I see this, Jesus taught in story too. I see story as being helpful because it grows. It, first of all, it validates what we're going through when we see somebody else in a deep way going through something in any way similar. But also it grows our empathy for other human beings because, we've seen what it looks like when there's a world without empathy and people are awful to each other. And when we can sit in the head of somebody else and what they're going through, and even if it's not what we've gone through, it grows our understanding of other people's struggles and other people's lives. And so I think story has a way, and I think, from the dawn of time, people have known that, but, also Jesus himself knew that, of this is going to get through to people in a better way. And I think we were made, I love, there's some, Andy Wilson is an author that has been a participant in our Role Makers community, and he has some fantastic quotes about how we're all characters in our own story and how we're all, invested in story and how God is invested in story, and his quotes are beautiful if you look some of those up. But I really do believe that like, God told stories, that's a part of who we are, and we learn that way really, really well. It doesn't mean that there aren't times for straight facts, like picking up that black and white sheet that says, this is what Crohn's is, and like coming to grips with the hard reality of it, or processing like, I got poked every day and that hurt, But if you saw, Captain America standing up for, hey, I'm going to fight for this, I'm going to fight for that, and you went, that's going to be, I'm inspired. I want to do that. I want to be like that. It's really helpful, and it's easier than a physical book when you're just really miserable to take in. So,
yeah, that was so eloquently said.
Nice.
Amen. That was great. Looks like we have time for one more question from the audience. Once again, coming from Haley. She's got a really practical question for you. She says, as someone who has multiple careers myself, I am curious about your time management tips.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this earlier on, but I can speak to it a lot more specifically. Thank you, Haley. There are just stages of life where you kind of have to maybe grieve it, but put things aside for a time. And in the stage of life of having young kids and homeschooling them, like that's my priority. I don't want to be, the mom that isn't present in the ways that I need to be. And I love teaching. I love the homeschooling aspect. So some of the business side and the advertisement side of the writing, I've had to put a little bit on hold. But the actual writing can go on. And then I have the projects there to do stuff with, to promote. I can still get stuff down on paper, and that's healthy for me. It's very therapeutic for me. It's good self-care for me. It helps me process. If I just had the kids all day and didn't have that also wouldn't be healthy for me. It's like putting my own oxygen mask on to go back into the day. And so at this point in life, with having 2 ninth graders and a 3rd grader, I only write once a week. But it does happen, and faithfully happens. And I have accountability best friends, and we do a writing evening. So it happens every week because it's on the schedule, and we start, 6:30 to 7, and we'll be like, okay, write for 45 minutes, and we call it word sprints. And a lot of authors will do this in community. And it's like, okay, at the end of 45 minutes, tell me how many words you got. We'll see you one or whatever, and share a sentence. And then, 9 or 10 at night or whatever, we'll call, and the reward is you get to read what you wrote out loud to the other. You get that instant gratification of having a response to what you wrote. And slowly, I'm getting books written. In the past, I would have devoted more late night evenings to it. But even if I have the time, I don't feel like I have the motivation or muster to write every single night. And especially without that accountability of, there are a lot of nights it's just like, okay, flop and rest tonight and try to go to bed at a decent time for the next day. But that once a week, it's still getting done. I've got 4 projects that I'm working on now, and I kind of toggle based on which one feels like the right, this is the right one for this difficult week or this month. And I'm going to process this one today. And that's helpful too. It's in the past, I would have like one book and I'd, plow through it and get it done as much as possible. And now I'm kind of like got 4, and it's like, okay, today needs to be this, and next week will be that. And slowly there a bunch more getting written that way. So, the career side of it, not the best stage of life for that for me. I've known other authors who've made it work. But not really the best stage of life for me. But definitely like it still needs to happen. It's still just such a healthy thing to have in my life, is to still keep writing. So It's one of those things too that isn't age specific. You know, other careers, it can be age specific, especially like the sports and things where, you know, you just can't do it. Whereas writing, you could do up to the day you die. It's something that I can always kind of like make money on the side or pick back up. And every new life experience, even when I have to put some of the writing on hold because like my family needs me, that's still gaining life experience that is going to enrich my writing later, and it's going to make my writing even better. So every time that I have to put it aside and live more life and be out in the real world, benefits that writing. And so there's really no lose here. It's a win-win.
That's awesome. I also see that we have a surprise guest at the end. I talked about him earlier, the man behind all of this who runs Comic Books for Kids. How's it going, Mark?
Listen, RJ, I had to jump on. I've been thoroughly enjoying the discussion you've had with Hollis. So I not only did I want to personally thank you, but Hollis, I wanted to share a little insight because I truly think that I know where the name of one of her books came from. You see, I think my wife called her and said, listen, I want you to write the autobiography of my husband.
My fault. Or Frog Prince, were you a frog or is it your fault?
No, it could be either, but I was leading to my fault because I just, you know.
That's cool. I love it.
There you go.
Thank you for what you do for kids.
Well, and thank you for sharing your Saturday with us. I was thinking about this. Have you ever, this is a crazy question. Have you ever had a dream and when you were awake saying, oh my gosh, I've got to write this down because this is going to be something I write about, and you do, or conversely, you say you're going to and then forget what your dream was about?
Yes, that has happened, and I'm always so sad. But Artificial Love, my short story, Artificial Love, is a dream. I dreamed it that night, and I was like, guys, I never do this, but I'm calling the school day, and I'm going to sit here for 3 hours and write this thing so I don't forget it. So they got a free day, and that's what got written.
That's great.
Cool.
So sometimes you do remember, and it's amazing.
That's great. Now, don't you see if you could figure out a way to automate that, wouldn't life be so much easier?
That would be amazing. I think our dreams often process some deep truths about ourselves too. Not always. Sometimes they're just crazy.
Well,
but
since it's my fault, since it's my fault, I wouldn't want any of my truths exposed in my, so.
Yeah. Couch it in a lot of like hidden characters. I have a t-shirt that I wear that says, be careful or you'll end up in my novel. So you just walk around and warn people, like, if I got to process something about myself that I don't want to look at, I'm going to put you in it instead.
Listen, it's a delight and a real pleasure to say hello. To thank you, Hollis. Thank you so much for allowing me to say hello to RJ. And just again, this is a passion project for us. We do this 7 days a week. We do this every day. Sickness knows it doesn't take a holiday. Neither do we. And the fact that you're sharing a weekend with us is very special. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad to be part of it. It's always such an honor to work with Hollis. Like everything he does just feels touched by greatness. I don't know. It's hard to put it in other words than that.
You do know he just recorded that, and that's going to be he's going to show that now every day on his social media.
That's going to wind up being a sound clip.
Yeah.
What RJ Conte thinks about me.
Everything is greatness.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we wrap up this hour, last thing for you is, where can people find you on social media, on buying your books? Where can people go to look you up and to get more information?
RJ Conte and Amazon has all of my current books, so that's really the best place. RJ Conte Authoress on Facebook. You can interact with me and see like sentences and little bits and pieces of the latest projects. My daughter and I are actually being published, 2 of our poems together. My daughter's getting published for the first time in a poetry anthology, so I'm starting to talk about that a little bit. So I'll talk about like upcoming projects. And then I have a cosplay and makeup, like where I like try to do the looks of different characters and things on Instagram. So the Pink Wig Life is one of those. You can see like fun makeup and other art type projects that aren't just writing on there too. And sometimes I'll promote a book by doing the cosplay of that character. So like I have a Ravel from Frog Prince cosplay look where I've got the wig and the look, and it's a lot of fun. I'll promote a book that way too. So any of those 3.
That's so cool. So everyone out there, make sure you go and you blow up RJ Conte, the steamiest of all Christian authors. We will go.
Me of all people. I'm gonna own it. I'm just gonna own it.
There you go. Well, thank you so much again for joining us for this hour, donating your time. Thank you, Mark, for all you do for kids. And I hope that all of you watching keep on watching. We've got into the next hour and on today and tomorrow. Lots and lots of great programming, all for Comic Books for Kids. Have a great one.
Thanks, guys.
You.
The Multiverse Fundraiser is partnering with Comic Books for Kids to raise money for their cause. Their mission is to provide comic books to children in hospitals and cancer centers across the United States, Canada, and the UK. We believe in the importance of providing stories that promote hope and bravery to kids who are facing things that are scarier than any supervillain. And we truly believe in this cause. To donate, you can either go to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/The Multiverse Fundraiser or directly to comicbooksforkids.org.
The Multiverse Fundraiser would like to thank our sponsors: Earth Dog Studios, Clobberin Comics, The Art of Brian Rodman, Studio Moonfall, Elusive Comics, and of course, the Phoenix Sisters Entertainment Network for hosting this event. Learn how to support these businesses on the MVFR website.